tutorials. Again, if you haven't already done so, go up to the top of the page. There's a green bar that says View Steve's screen, and then select the view options where you can go into full screen mode. I panicked when I saw that we are recording the session. You know, you get all flustered when you see the recording. All right, so obviously you guys have joined the audio already. Steve, can you, there you go, perfect, thank you. So the first item, how do I join audio? You can either join via a telephone line or also your computer audio. If you wanted to switch, you just have to select the icon next to the microphone, and that will allow you to switch over to computer or voice. And then the next item, find the feedback tools. Open up your participants panel. If you haven't already done so, the participants panel's icon is at the bottom. It'll show up over on the right-hand side of your screen. You're going to find all kinds of feedback tools, the yes, no, and if you click on the circle with 3 dots, you'll see, ooh, a coffee cup, the applause icon, a thumbs up, thumbs down. All right, there's also the reaction button at the bottom of the screen as well. Feel free, go ahead and click on any of those tools, play around, get familiar with it. You guys have probably all been in Zoom, or a lot of you have. If not, you can't hurt anything. Feel free, go ahead. And then we may be using the annotation tools during the session. And what that means is that you're going to see under that black bar at the top. So again, the view options at the top of the screen, you'll see the option to annotate. So once you select annotate, then you'll have the options to point on the screen, to write directly on the screen. There's a T, a text tool. Again, go ahead and locate the annotation toolbar. And then the chat feature, go ahead and open up the chat feature and let us know where you're calling in from. Go ahead and make sure the drop down send to says everyone. We'll be asking everyone to give us some responses into chat. So go ahead and make sure the send to says everyone and let us know where you're calling in from. Great, I've seen all kinds of locations coming in from all over, looks like all over North America. Great, awesome. And I'm in the central coast of California, by the way. We will have some polls that you'll need to answer, and they will pop up right in the middle of your screen. They look just like the little screenshot here we have at the bottom center. If you could just please select your answer and hit submit as quickly as possible, and then we'll be able to share the results and move forward. I think that's everything. Please do reach out to me in chat if you need any assistance at all. And with that, I'm happy to turn the session over.
All right. So welcome, folks. My name is David Campt, and I'm with the Dialogue Company. Steve, why don't you say hello?
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Mahaley. I'm working with David on this particular project and a few others related to allyship and anti-racism work.
That's right. So thank you, Steve. So what we're here to do today is to have a good conversation with you. We have exactly 100 people. Look at that. We made triple digits about allyship in these really complex and interesting times. And so what we're going to do is do some presentation of information to you, get your feedback about that in using technology, and then have you dive into some of the content and dig into it, see how it compares to your experience, and maybe improve on some of the things that we're already thinking, and then we'll come back. So that's the overall. Let me just tell you, I'll say more about the agenda in a minute. Let me give you the bigger picture of this project. We've been engaged by the Democracy Fund and Impactual, a group that the Democracy Fund works with, to explore an issue that has emerged in all of the groups that Democracy Fund is supporting as it tries to impact the election in a positive way. So, as we all know, this is a historic time. Racial issues are in the news, and obviously that affects all aspects of life, including our work in trying to impact the election. So part of what has emerged is that in these multiracial groups that our Democracy Fund and Impactual are supporting to try to influence the election, part of what they have noticed is there's some issues around allyship that have come up. You know, these are primarily populated organizations by people of color, but there's a substantial portion of white people in them. And so, you know, as the rest of our society is dealing with diversity and inclusion issues, so are these organizations. And so part of what's happened is that there's been, in these very contentious times, in very contended times, traumatic times really, issues around what does it mean to be a good ally working for these organizations has emerged as something to think about. And there's disagreement about that. So part of what we were asked to do is to probe what are some of the challenges around allyship that have come up, and how do managers who are grappling with these challenges think about that, and then we want to put those to y'all as a group and get your feedback and your additional thinking about that, and then we will use that as the basis of providing a set of guidelines that can go out to everybody so we can avoid what might be called the pitfalls of allyship. So that's our overall project goal. So we interviewed managers, we got their feedback. You're going to hear about that feedback in a minute. We're engaging you guys to further think about that and refine that. And then on the basis of that feedback, we're going to produce a set of guidelines that might be useful. I want to say how the meeting is going to flow, but I just want to say that it's really great that that so many folks have wanted to sign up for this meeting. And I want to signal to our partners in this is a group called NSYNC helping us do this meeting. And that was Kathy with NSYNC. And I just want to say, Kathy, that we are at exactly 100 people. And so I just want to flag that there might be some issues around that because whether we have an account for 500 people. So I'm just flagging to you, there might be some issues around that, but let us continue on with the 100 people that are online. Okay. So we're in the introduction. So if we could go to that next slide, Steve. So that's I said the project overview. This is how we're described. Our job is to try to help give both allies and organizations in them some guidance as to how we can grapple with those issues of allyship I discussed. Go ahead, next slide, Steve. So the project goals, as I said, were to interview managers. We did that, engage you guys, that's today, and then make the guidance available. And that'll happen after this meeting and after, if we have subsequent meetings, to get even more feedback about it. Next slide. We're in introductions now. We asked people in the registration that if you have any illustrations of the complexity of allyship. I do a lot of work. I do a project called the White Ally Toolkit. And I know that race is a difficult issue for everybody, including for allies. There's complexities involved. And so we ask people if you have any illustrations of some of those complexities to keep those in mind. And in just a few minutes, I want to ask you to put those in the chat. We'll give it about 3 minutes to do that because we want to hear from you. We have our notions of it. We did the interviewing, but we want to hear from you directly. Then I'm going to present to you what we found out, and then we're going to work in small groups, and then we're going to have an evaluation. That's how this meeting is going to flow. So next slide. So basically what we're going to do next is give you a chance if we know that everybody doesn't read instructions on a meeting, but if you were one of the people that thought about the complexities of allyship and you have a short story to tell about that, this will be a good time for that. I'm going to play a great old song that lasts about 3 minutes. We're not going to take that long to do it, but if you have enough time to tell a brief illustration of some of the complexities, and we're going to resume in about 3 minutes. right, so somebody recognized that that was a Booker T and the MG's old song called Green Onion. So okay, so so thanks to a couple of people who added a story about that. So let us now move towards telling y'all what we found out when we talked to several managers about some of the pitfalls of allyship. And basically, I'm gonna outline 9 different pitfalls that came up in these interviews. And then what we're gonna do, we're gonna poll you, do a couple polls on your perspective about them, which I'm gonna ask, which do you see most frequently, which are most damaging, and which you think you're most subject to. And then we're gonna go into small groups to do more analysis of those issues and come up with guidance about what might be done about them. Okay. Next slide, Steve. Okay, so one of the things that came up was the issue of what might be called hyper wokeness. And that's an ally being kind of excessively militant and demonstrating their racial solidarity. Sometimes people call this performative wokeness. For example, there was an instance where a white staff person was insisting on taking Juneteenth off in opposition to their boss, who was a person of color. So that's a kind of a excessive wokeness that might arguably be performative, but certainly cause some disruption in the organization. A second issue, biased responses to leadership. A lot of you folks work for complex organizations with multi-level, multi-tiered leadership, which has multi-level people on it. And sometimes what can happen is, we're all affected by white superiority thinking. I like to say hashtag we all have the virus. So we're subject to biased responses to leadership, sometimes, for example, being more responsive to taking directives from white leadership than leadership of color. Next one, Steve. A fragile emotionality after constructive and negative feedback. So, again, we're at a contended time, race is an issue in the news. So if somebody, one of the things that the managers talked about was people getting some feedback about how issues of racial bias or privilege might affect somebody, and then the person who gets that feedback kind of breaking down, and so much so that their emotions became the issue and not what the behavior was that drove the feedback. So that's another issue that came up, fragile emotionality. We've all heard the book White Fragility. Fourth issue, microaggressions. Somebody performing a behavior that experienced by a BIPOC as diminishing or exclusionary or otherwise problematic. So an example, entering a room and addressing legal issues and saying, as we attorneys feel, and everybody's not an attorney, and that can cause an issue, or validating ideas offered by a white person differently than a person of color. Next slide. So these two issues, the next two issues, illustrate a certain kind of a dilemma that allies face. I think allies face a lot of dilemmas. So one problem is excessive or clumsy or intrusive attempts at emotional support. So approaching somebody who you don't really know well, and how are you doing about the killing that just happened, Ahmaud Arbery or George Floyd or whatever, and sort of leaning in the way that's inappropriate to your level of relationship or to that moment. So kind of an excessive or clumsy leaning in. And at the other end of that is inattention to the emotional needs of people of color in the organization. So not being mindful or making accommodations to the fact that there are people who have been traumatized, and the way that things happen in the news traumatize some people more than others, and it's useful to be attentive to that. And so there is this. So these two illustrate that there's a balance to be struck, but the managers talked about problems at either end of that balance, or out of balance. Next one. Limited courage in raising equity concerns. This is about not challenging deficiencies, inclusion or equity in the organization. So, so one of the things that managers talked about, where there's some white folks who recognize that there's inequities or problems, recognize it sort of in private conversations, but won't bring it up when things are on the line, won't bring it up to management or in times where it might be a little bit risky. So lack of courage. So seeing these concerns but not bringing them up. Another one is cooperating with with white cultural norms in the organization. So for example, even though many of these organizations are run by people of color and are largely oriented toward them, you know, we're still in America and we're subject to different kind of norms, all sorts of norms that might be not that functional. So there might be an excessive focus on get tasks done and not enough to relationships, to the point where the things break down, as an example of that. Or an excessive attention to formal credentials as opposed to people's capacity to get the job done. Or uh, super attention to metrics that are hard to really account for and can be tangentially related to actually getting the work done. So cooperating with these potentially problematic cultural norms might be another one. Next slide. And finally, not opposing organizational norms and practices that undermine equity. So we talked about lack of courage. This is related to this. It's just participating in cultural qualities that tend to worsen equity. So a lot of organizations have a kind of, for example, a silence around talking about difficult issues. So if you're participating in that silence, not bringing things up or going along with the submerging of issues, that's an example of not opposing norms that ultimately don't produce equity. Another one, a couple of managers talked about salary transparency, and they talked about white managers who in these nonprofits are sort of have the standard American, we don't talk about salary, which ultimately tends to work against people of color. So those are the 9 issues that we're going to be probing today. So what I want to first do is to just poll y'all 3 times on those issues. So you'll see them again. And the first question is, you think about these things as coming up in particular instances, which of these are the most frequent? If we could put the polling slide now, that'd be great. The polling question number 1. Well, there should be, what we should see, these are the questions, but what you should see is a polling slide on them, right? So the question is, you can vote up to 3 for each of, or 3 of these, up to 3. So which of these do you see most frequently? Is it the hyper wokeness? Is it the biased responses to leadership? Is it the fragile emotionality after constructive feedback? Is it microaggressions, excessive or clumsy attempts to add emotional support, or its opposite, inattention to the emotional support needs, limited courage on raising equity concerns, not opposing organizational norms and practices undermine equity, or cooperating with problematic white cultural norms? Which do you see most frequently? And again, you can choose up to 3. And if you want to say something else, there's the bottom one is something else.
All right, looks like we have about 60% that have completed. Just remember to hit the submit button down at the bottom, and we'll give you about another 15 seconds. Okay, thank you, everyone. I am in the process of closing this first poll.
Okay, all right. So now we're going to look at the same list. You can see the results there. So thank you so much for that. Now we're going to look at the same list. And so that was the question of how frequently you see it. The next question is, when you do see it, how derailing or damaging is that? So, so how impactful is that when it does come up? So that's the next question. Same list. Because there could be things that come up frequently but are not as damaging, other things that don't come up as frequently, but when they do come up, they are damaging. How frequently, when these come up and as noticed, how damaging? Which three are the most damaging?
All right, looks like we're at about 75%. I'll give you about 15 seconds and then I will end this poll. Please do hit the submit button as soon as you're finished.
Right, and we're know that Kathy is capturing this using her Zoom magic.
All right, I am going to go ahead and end that poll and share the results.
Okay, great. So we can see the non-opposing organizational norms is the most damaging, followed by inattention to the emotional needs. Okay, great. Thank y'all so much. And then the last question, and this one is anonymous. We made it anonymous on purpose. Which three of these do you think you are most at risk of exhibiting? Which three of these, again, this is anonymous, so you tell on yourself, but nobody gonna know except the universe. We won't know. Which three of these do you think you are the most at risk of exhibiting?
Okay, about another 15 seconds. Great, I am going to end that poll now.
Great, okay. All right, well, thank you all so much. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna shift towards the breakout room. So here's what's gonna happen. Basically, we're gonna be in groups of 5 or 6, and each topic will get a couple of groups, and you will get, have we put the steps? You will get a list of a handout with all of the topics. Your group will have a particular topic. We'll give that assignment in a minute. And the list of the topics will also have the group's task. And I'm not going to read it all now, but basically you're going to get in the group, do a round of introductions, choose a timekeeper, and then share your experiences related to this topic, and then do some work on adding to our guidance. Then we have some questions and suggestions, and then there's room to add things. And what we're going to ask you to do is to put your group results in the chat. And then on the back end, we can't hear from every group. We can hear, but we'll try to hear from at least one group on every topic, just to get a sense of. But the goal is to have every group submit things in the chat. So, Kathy,
David,
if you want to,
David, I could just reiterate something about
sure.
that. Yeah, just so that everyone knows, it's one document and it has every issue in it, but you're not going to be working every issue. And at the top of the document are the instructions. So you don't have to worry about remembering what we're just saying now. Just make sure that one or more people in your group have a copy of it handy, and we're about to distribute that. Okay?
Okay, and I should also say, so it's about to go in the chat, Steve, right? The document?
Yeah, if Kathy or Cheryl can take care of that.
Okay, so there it is now. So we should just say, this whole meeting was designed around, and you have Word and PDF copies. This meeting was designed around the whole racial caucus group. So if you are you've joined this meeting as a person of color, our intention was that you would be people of color being a separate group. We market this most towards white folks. But if you are a person of color, and so we think this whole thing will work better if people of color are in a separate group. So if you are that, identify yourself, and we can make that happen. Okay, so I will pass that on. So there's a few people.
They want to know how do they drop or how would you like them to be identified? Just raise their hand if they're a person of color? Is that what you were asking?
I think that what would be most useful to you, Kathy, because you and Cheryl are going to be doing this. So
yeah, I think Cheryl might want a raise hand would be great. That would probably work.
Great.
And so we're going to have to make a few adjustments in the background. So just give us a moment.
And to the people of color group, y'all can you can talk about any of the issues that you think are you're most drawn to. So as the other groups are going to have an assigned topic, and I recognize that the issue that might be most burning for you might not be the one you're assigned to, but this is a way we take advantage of the group's the genius of the group, and you will all get a report on all of this. So
that feedback is important.
That feedback is important, and I just want to point out to Kathy and Cheryl that somebody's saying even I'm not using video. So, but here's the point. We're gonna break out in groups. The people color out their own group. They choose their assignment, and the assignments are in the chat. So I would advise to copy that into your somewhere on your computer. So when you are zoomed off to a group, you can know which group that you are, which topic you have. So pay attention. You'll get a thing on your screen saying which group you're in. Write that down, because once you're in the group, once you're zoomed off to it, it's hard to identify what group you're in. So that, so what I'm saying is two things. One, copy the assignment thing that's in the chat, and then when you get the notice of go to a room, write down your group, so then you can know which group you're in and which topic you have. Is that right, Steve? Have I gotten that straight?
That's right. So I can't, by the way, so I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the chat right now, but yeah, you should be noting down with your pen and paper that we asked you to have handy at the outset what your particular assignment will be, what group you're in, so that when we kick you off into the groups, you'll know exactly which issue out of that multi-page document you're going to be talking about.
So can someone drop the link in the chat, please?
I'm sorry, the link for what?
Yeah, the link. Well, this is a note from Nikki. I don't know what.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. I'm not sure.
Okay, so at this point, we are hoping that you have copied the assignments of which groups to which topics, and you're about to make assignments, right, Kathy or Cheryl? So again, once you see which group you're in, jot that down so that once you get to the room, you can know which topic you're supposed to have, because you will have already copied down which topic that group has.
How about we get a green check if that is clear as mud? Go ahead and give us a green check if you are ready to be zoomed off into one of these groups. You can, we already have raised hand. How about a red X if you're thoroughly confused and you need some, I might take you off mute so you can ask a question.
So you're not going to see what group you're in until I hit open all rooms. Well, this is Cheryl speaking. I'm your other producer. So as soon as I hit open all rooms, you guys are going to get a box. It's going to pop up and it's going to say you've been asked to join breakout room 15. So if you're room 15, then you're going to do the not opposing topic. All right.
Right. People of color can talk about any of the topics that they want. So your job is to choose as a group which topic and just offer your reflections. And you can choose more than one topic. So, but the goal is to come up to enhance that document, just like other groups are enhancing the document, except you can go through any topic or multiple topics.
All right, I'm going to put that into chat one more time. So you can take a snapshot of it on your phone or something like that if you want to, but really you're going to get two choices or two chances to find out what group you're in. So I think we are ready to go. I don't see any raised hands or other questions in chat. Here we go. I'll keep you posted on your timing as well.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Steve, you want to unshare your screen?
He doesn't have to. unless you want him to. We do still have a few folks still here in the main room with us. So if you do have, oh, they're all gone.
They're all gone.
Fabulous.
Okay, so what is our timing on this? How long do we want? I forgot, 30 minutes?
Yeah, 30 minutes. So what do we do? I have a really bad feeling about that 100 number. Maybe it's too late to do anything about it, but
Yeah.
I need to grieve over that.
Did we tell them that we do have folks still joining us back in the main room? So I'm going to let Cheryl help those folks get into a breakout room. And did we mention to them that they'll be in there for 30 minutes? Should we send them a broadcast message to let them know that?
Yeah, let's do that. We're gonna reconvene. Tell them we're gonna reconvene at 5 after, and they'll get a 5-minute warning. So we'll give them a little less than 30 minutes.
All right, you got it.
You got it? Okay, thank you. I was just sending you a message. I wasn't sure if you heard that. And again, we have a few folks that are logging into the main room. We are going to Zoom you off into a breakout room to have a discussion. We might want to ask them about, make sure they're unmuting as well, right? I don't think we said anything about them unmuting their phones.
Yeah, that would be helpful. And I think Cheryl's last announcement might have been lacking the hour, just in the content of the announcement.
Well, because they could be any different. Yeah.
Time zones.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, because for me it's 5 after 2. For you it's 5 after 4 or whatever. Victor, you should have a box pop up that
You know
is
what?
asking you to
I'm
join.
chatting with him right now.
Oh, you
Cheryl.
are? Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
And Alberto too.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, Victor, so I don't know if you just joined the call. I'm not sure if, do you want to go into the breakout room?
He's
Yeah.
not unassigned, so he's been assigned a room. He should
Oh.
have the pop up.
But
Yeah.
Victor appears to be a person of color, so I hope he was assigned to.
Yeah, I remember I was in another room with actually a couple of my colleagues, and they were like, "Hey, Victor, there's a person of color room."
Right.
Oh, okay. So maybe we can move him to.
Who's that
Let
person of
me
color?
find you.
And Alberto, I don't know if you.
Alberto is
Sorry.
also a person of color.
Okay.
Colleagues.
Okay.
That could be why they
So
came
Victor,
back
you
out.
should get a new pop up to send you to room 19.
Thanks, Victor. Awesome.
19, great. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Peace out, bro.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of them didn't have their cameras on, and then they didn't raise their hand.
hand. They couldn't find it. Yeah, that happens.
Who
Okay.
was the other one?
Alberto left, or I don't know if he got into another room.
Yeah.
Do you see him there?
I don't see him anywhere.
David,
No.
what's
just
your
left
reflection so far on this?
Well, like I said, I need to talk about the 100-person thing.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
we discussed the 10-minute cutoff. So at 10.
Got it. Welcome back, everyone. A few more seconds and everybody will be back.
And I just want to
Adrian,
throw that out too.
sideways.
Sorry, Cheryl. I just wanted to throw that out there that you can change from gallery view up in the upper right-hand corner and see everyone's video if you like. We've just done that on our end. There's a speaker view and a gallery view, and then you can see all of the little thumbnails of everybody here in the class.
All right. All right. So where are we on people getting back, Kathy?
Everybody should be back. It looks like we've got a few people that are already starting to put up their discussions in the chat. So if
Great.
you are the scribe of your group, go ahead and put your discussion up there.
Right. So let me just tell you how this is going to work in our remaining 24 minutes. So we're grateful that everybody engaged as they did. And what we want to do is to hear from at least one group per topic. Obviously, the reports need to be brief because we have to manage our time. We'll also hear from the person of color group. And we hope is that every group, including the groups that don't get a chance to report, put their findings in the chat. Because basically we're working on a group intelligence model. So we're putting the problem to the good brain power in this meeting and letting us all work at it and come up with better ideas. So when you put your ideas in the chat, make sure you tell us what topic you were on so we can know how to attach that, because what we're going to produce is an enhanced document based on what y'all said. So the goal now is to go around the groups. I'll just call out which group, and one of you can signify that you want to speak. Should they just unmute themselves to do that? How should we do that?
Yeah, they can just unmute themselves if they like. You can raise your hand and I can unmute you too.
Right. And so we'll just hear a brief report, and then we'll go down all the topics, and then we'll have a couple of evaluation questions, and then we'll be done. So in the order that we gave them, if you might notice, the first set of topics, the first three were really about sort of the individual, the ally themselves. So let's start out with the first one, which was the hyper wokeness issue. If one of the groups wants to say a brief report about how you enhanced what you talked about, would be helpful.
I was in one of the room 2 groups. We didn't designate a speaker, but I'm happy to jump in here. Maggie was nice enough to go on ahead and put our questions that we came up with into the chat. We actually found that to be a helpful way to sort of spur discussion around this, was to think of what other questions.
Okay.
And the 2 we had were, how do you address the tension of finding commonalities with experiences that recognizes that a white person can never fully understand what it means to live as BIPOC in our society? And we, sort of examined what kind of analogies from our own lives do we try to make when we're trying to, wrap our heads around something that we as white people ultimately cannot completely understand. And, whether or not that is limiting our ability to, address the issue honestly and not, basing our ideas in our own experience rather than the experiences of BIPOC themselves, giving us guidance on how we should approach the situation.
Were there
And
any?
Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, that was the first one. And then the second one was, more of a qualitative examination of, self-examining. Do you feel like your behavior is part of a presentation or an honest attempt at conversation that experiences of people of
Great.
color?
Great reflective questions. So did any analogies emerge that were particularly compelling? You said that was one thing you said.
I don't want to share on behalf of anybody else, because we talked about some personal experiences and ways that we've each experienced discrimination in our lives. For mine, I said that, trying to struggle to understand, sometimes I make an analogy to discrimination and violence I've experienced with cis men in my life. But I know that that analogy is not complete. It is not full experience, and that I should not mistake it for such.
Yeah, almost all analogies are inherently limited because they're only analogies.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you so much. The next one, bias responses to leadership. One of the groups like to make a brief report about that and what you added to the document.
Sure. This is Pete Backoff. I can jump in here on our group. Yeah, I think this is a really interesting topic because the manager-managee relationship is very individual, and it's very driven by specific dynamics to particular people. A lot of what we sort of discussed was disagreements with your boss will happen, and I think as a white person in this space, making sure that you develop a practice of self-awareness and reflection so that you take a minute to pause and really think about why and when you disagree with your boss, where it's coming from, and trying to really, develop that as a practice, I think is a really important piece of the effort here. I think that starting from a place of generosity and curiosity when there is a disagreement, I think is a good perspective to take, right? Like if you are working with a diverse person and understanding that they may make decisions or say things that you disagree with, start with the perspective of, okay, let me figure out where they're coming from. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with them completely, but if you take that spirit of curiosity, then you can hopefully develop a good practice of developing better
That's
understanding.
actually a useful thing for in any situation, right? For
Exactly.
anybody, right? Yeah. Yeah,
for sure. And then we also talked about intersectionality and how challenging that can be in these types of situations, because if your boss is a diverse person, then you don't necessarily know sometimes if you disagree with them, if that's coming from a place of age, race, gender, you have more experience, you just have a different specialty or a different focus on that. And so, but that just kind of returned to us for that idea of taking a moment, developing a practice of self-reflection on like, okay, if I disagree with this person, like, where's it coming from? And developing that practice so that you can hopefully have a good communication about like why exactly, or being able to express yourself instead of just kind of jumping into any sort of assumptions about where the disagreement is coming from.
Got you. Thanks a lot, Pete. Okay, great. Okay, the next topic, again, the last individually based topic is fragile emotionality after constructive or negative feedback.
Can group 5 go? I'm group 5 and we had this topic. Should I go?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So I think the group that we had were mostly like, I guess you could say middle or upper managers. So I think the first question to ourselves is we individually, most of us haven't been in a particular instance where we were given feedback on microaggressions to react to. But I think that raised the question to us is, are we allowing or creating a space that basically creates space for colleagues to feel comfortable raising these type of issues? So I think that was one question. And then also we discussed that it's also on us to discuss with white people that we know why it's important to have these conversations at work, and like being defensive is not the right reaction, because it's really truly like going to help growth all around and understanding. And also I think from the white perspective, it's also meant to be, it's not necessarily about you, this conversation. So like making sure that you're not overreacting with anger, fear, aggression, or sadness. It should really be a moment to listen and understand the impact of your action. I realized a lot of those weren't questions, but they were just some.
No, they don't have to be. I mean, so let me just be clear. It was questions or guidance. So you're doing great.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for throwing in on that. And again, I hope that all the groups are submitting stuff in the chat. It looks like it really filled up. Okay. Okay, so those were almost about the individual. I mean, all these things are related. Next are sort of more relational ones. So the next one was microaggressions. Would either one of the groups who did that willing to make a brief report?
My name is Nikki. My pronouns are she and her, and I can do a report out on our microaggressions chat.
Great.
I said that we were group 5. That was my fault. The questions that we added were, am I assuming I have a new idea and that the folks of color around me haven't already experienced this, done this, thought of this before? Am I the expert? Also, am I assuming everyone wants or needs to be my friend? So we were sort of talking about feeling kind of entitled to folks of color's spaces or their energy, or wanting them to be friendly and not chilly to us, like one of the prompts was in our discussion. And we were also saying that sometimes we show up into groups or at our work spaces like we have come up with something new and we have something new to bring, and you're committing a microaggression by basically assuming that this hasn't already been thought of before, or that people of color haven't been doing it for centuries and decades and months and weeks and whatever. And we also talked about how microaggressions, we don't remember a lot of times when we do it, but we always remember how we feel, which kind of ties into the fragility. You know, we get emotional or embarrassed or ashamed, or we get really uncomfortable when it's called out. So it's just, you know, making sure to hold on to those moments and do that differently and show up differently.
Thank you so much. Okay, great, great. Man, what kind of rich content is this? This is fantastic. So, okay. So one of the things I should have said this right before microaggressions. One of the things that linked the last two comments was the importance of centering, right? The importance of, like, in these situations, just like taking a moment to reflect, to get centered, and that can be so valuable, even on this kind of, even in the microaggressions one too. All right. Excessive or clumsy or intrusive attempts at emotional support. If one of the groups who talked about that could make a brief report.
Yeah, this is Chauncey McLean. Preferred pronouns are he, him. We were group 9, and you know the big thing for us was that there really needs to be, at an organizational level, guidance around this issue, so that we're not leaving individuals to their own devices on kind of figuring this out, and that that ideally the institutional guidance would come from people of color within the organization, and setting this up so that folks are have best practices and can think about it. But on a personal level, the things that we came up with was, one, assuming that the institutional support is there and guidance is there, is, do my proposed comments align with the best practices that we've discussed, hopefully? And if not, just ask yourself, is there any chance that my comment can be construed as digging? And I think the other thing that we found interesting is that there was the reason there needed to be institutional support is there was a converse of this, was that the fear that any comment would be construed as digging would prevent people from expressing support or reaching out. And that was really, for us, the reason why there needed to be institutional guidance, so people felt like they knew where to go and how to offer support without digging unnecessarily.
Right. And so thank you so much for that. And see, and even that is an interesting dilemma, because it's not like all people of color are the same. So even if you come up with like some guidance, there's gonna be some people who are like, where that line is too intrusive, or not caring, not engaging enough. So thank you so much for that. Okay, the next one, obviously highly related to that, is the inattention to the needs of emotional needs of BIPOC. So would one group that dealt with that topic be willing to make a brief report?
Yeah.
Hi,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh no, go right ahead. You're fine.
Yeah, you're looking for group inattention, right?
Yeah.
Okay, group 11, gotcha. Okay, yeah, what we talked about, I was with Billy, CJ, and Elliot. My name is Tannen, I should say he, him, from Madison, Wisconsin, with For Future. And yes, the main focus that we had was about on inattention. And what the main points that we took away was that white allies should be doing their own homework, just in like using resources like the one that you talked about. You have, David, I know the allyship toolkit. That's probably a great example. And not putting that pressure on.
Can you say that again? I didn't say that again.
Sure, the allyship toolkit.
Oh.
Yeah, I was just saying that sounds like a good tool for white allies to invest in, instead of putting the pressure on the IPOCs. We also acknowledge that there's good problems. There's an urgency of this movement that helps motivate the change that is needed within institutions, and normalizing, addressing these needs and making space for these needs. The time is now to make these changes again institutionally. It's great that this sort of outreach of making sure that this is addressed and not having that inattention is becoming more normalized. We also talked about how it's important to ask what people need and making sure that we're focusing on it on an individual level and doing things within institutions like giving space to be flexible with work. For example, if a BIPOC needs time to take off from work and have white allies offer to support the needs that they have and do the work and pick up some of the slack, you know, per se, especially during times times that are hard like these. We talked about how a number of us have taken the Harvard's implicit bias test, which of course is subject to a lot of different, here I'll turn my thing on. It's subject to, since we're taking it at home, it's not like 100% accurate or whatnot, but it makes you think, and that's something that's important.
Putting it in the chat.
Yeah. That for me, for example, I can only speak for myself. I felt like I didn't have much racial bias and learned, at least from that, for how accurate it was. There's a lot more bias that I had and that I should be being aware of and being honest about, being humbled about, and starting with myself first. And that's helped me personally. I can only speak to that.
Yep. Hashtag we all have the virus.
I just wanted to chime in. I was from the group 19, basically the people of color group. So I was glad that he brought that up because we actually did mention in our sharing our experiences that the hard question is, are we responsible for educating others on how things should, how we feel, you know, and like asking or probing those questions. So I'm definitely glad that you guys brought that up because that was something that we definitely spoke about in the experiences. And I think it kind of goes hand in hand. I think using those tools and also still getting the input from people of color can definitely chime in something good because like you said, we are not all the same and we don't all have the same needs. So it's very important to be aware of that and not group us all together as like one because we still are individuals that have individual needs.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Okay. So a couple more. We got limited courage on raising equity concerns. So now we've shifted more to like the ones that are truly organizational, how to ally relates to the organization. So limited courage on raising equity concerns. Would one of the groups that talked about that would be willing to offer forward their thoughts?
Hi, this is Monica. I'm representing group 13. It was great to be on the call. A lot of us actually had experience, so we're gonna go towards more of like the guidance. Some of us were managing people of color or had a hand in hiring and actually improved hiring percentage of people of color, and some of us dealt with the salaries, and some of us were part of a task force, more at a staff task force involving diversity and inclusion. So our guidance is really transparency in terms of what is the distribution of employees. I think that companies have lofty goals and they share KPIs, so why can't like diversity and inclusion also be a KPI? Involving leadership in meetings. So I was part of a staff task force, but we really should have someone in leadership being involved in that directly. And then another topic we talked about was not just improving hiring, but also retention, and things that could help is advocating and providing mentoring, promotional paths, transparency on job duty responsibilities, because it's not very obvious when why someone is being promoted versus the other person. Also improving the culture, making sure people are inclusive either through social gatherings or mentoring, like I said before. And then someone also said that in their job, they were asked, staff surveys were distributed in their company. So it was nice to have like a voice as a non-management or a management role, because they felt that being asked their opinion played a part in advocating for others as well. And then we also talked about management training. training on subconscious bias, microaggression, racism, because it's not really, it's an issue impacting people of color, but it's not up to the person of color to fix this. It takes a village. So definitely educating managers and having accountability and transparency, so it's really taken seriously at a company.
Wow, y'all talking about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right.
Thank you.
Cool.
Some things I can add to that as well. For like, we also had this same limiting courage topic, and so what we came up with was that it's important to ask yourself whether the organization that you're working with or actually has reflective representation, as in like in meetings, conversations where decisions are being made, right? And one form of doing that would be to make a formal diversity, equity, and inclusion caucus or a commission, and to have people from all kinds of like levels of the company be represented in that, but also like have the company be active within its community and putting a check and a balance on that.
Got you. So, so we're gonna hear from the last two groups, and we want to try to close as close to 5:30 as possible. Just to add a little quick comment. So, I think that this is another example of a kind of a tension. Like there's a tension between the clumsy attempts at intervening and the inattention, right? There's also an attention between this one, which is limited courage, and that hyper woke one, which is the first one, right? Because on the one hand, we all should be attentive to what's our degree to which our organizations are actually living up to the racial equity that we all strive for. But one could overdo that and push for Juneteenth over the boss's suggestions, right? On the other hand, you can be too limited in your willingness to bring things up. So, you know, we're all in a difficult situation trying to grapple with racial equity, and allies face dilemmas in that too. Okay, great. Cooperating with problematic white cultural norms. Anybody want to make a brief report about that from that topic?
Yes, I can speak about that. So basically what we discussed were two things mostly. The first thing is professional expectations. You know, things like what to wear on a video call, you know, the expectations for people's work hours. And then the second thing we discussed was when we can think of ways to help people of color in the context. Sometimes we tend to assume as allies that people of color are disadvantaged for a variety of factors, and that in itself is prejudice, because not all people of color have the same universal experience.
Got you. Okay. We'll look forward to getting thank you for that, for doing that and doing it so briefly. We're going to get the full report in the chat. Thank you so much. And the last one, not opposing organization, well, the second last one, we might go back to people of color if they have more to say. Not opposing organizational norms and practices that undermine equity.
I'm happy to go. Hi, I'm Robbie, pronouns he, him. Hey there, thanks for pulling this together. We were group 16, and really briefly, we had about 3 buckets we were looking at. One is part of what's so pernicious about systemic and structural racism is the idea that those who would purport to fight against it, allies, often have trouble seeing it and seeing our own complicity in it. And so one of the questions or themes we're looking at is, how can we unearth more of these norms that uphold inequity within these organizations, recognizing that part of the problem is we don't see it? Specifically, can we create some mechanisms for regular low-risk communications from those that do see it, in this case, non-white members of the team and people of color, to offer up that these norms are inequitable, to flag them in a way that doesn't feel like it could risk retribution in some way or cost a whole lot to share that.
You got any ideas on how to do that?
Working.
It's a great, even just labeling is important, but did you come up with any ideas about how to do that?
We didn't get so much into the specifics from my own experience professionally, I think anonymous feedback is a really powerful mechanism, even alongside having opportunities for people to put their name to what they're listing. Absent that, I've found it's hard to get the real truth from folks who don't.
Yeah, but you can imagine like the anonymous thing, some sort of a barrel that has a slot in it where like things that trouble you around here, right? And you can label it more specifically if you want. You can, drop that in there. So I got you. That's great. Okay. Is that it? Anything else?
Just real quick, how the urgency of the moment always strikes back against whatever sort of processes or practices we're trying to put in place when the rubber hits the road. If we're trying to hire someone quickly and returning to our own networks, and that's part of the norms and culture that we've established, that's always going to be a real foe for this sort of work. So understanding how those norms fit in too and how we can counter that right away.
Got you. Somebody said it. Thank you so much. Somebody said in the chat, we use a Google form for anonymous suggestion box. Got it. So are there any more contributions from the people of, thank you so much, Robbie. Any more contributions from the people of color group? Y'all weighed in the middle of it. That was great. Any other topics that you weighed in on that it would be useful to speak out loud briefly? Okay. Okay. So listen, we want to do a couple of, so this has been fantastic. I know we're over time. So instead of giving y'all this incredibly brilliant wrap up, which I had together, we're going to just do our closing evaluation questions and let y'all go. So if we could put up the evaluation, that would be great. And I would encourage a couple of people, if there are things that you wanted to get into this meeting that you did not say out loud and would like to send them to me privately, just put in the chat to me, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, the evaluation is very short.
It's just 2 questions.
Very
so
short.
The first question.
Kim wants the brilliant wrap up.
The first question, is it up? Because I can't see it on my screen, Steve. Is it up on the screen?
It is.
Okay, so the first question is basically, to what extent did you say what was on your heart and mind? Basically all the way from you withheld it, to you mostly withheld it, to you mostly said it, a little withheld it, to you said it.
And we're already at 90%. So I'm going to give you about 5 more seconds and go ahead and end that poll. I know you guys probably need to run off to another meeting.
Everybody busy trying to help this nation. Let's remember what we're trying to do, right?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
And let me open up the last one.
Next question is the overall satisfaction with this meeting from 1 to 10, with 10 as the highest.
They got it down to 98 days. Yeah.
There you go.
While you answered that, note that I have grabbed everything from the chat that you have contributed, and we're going to come back to you with the full document that has all of the ideas in them for everybody. So
that's right.
Thank you for all of your work and teams on this.
So all right. So we're going to get back to, will the slides be shared? I think we can do that. So so listen, y'all, I was on the Daily Show last night.
What?
I was on the Daily Show last night.
Here's the wrap.
And what we were talking about, one of the things that I was in a skit, and the skit included this issue of like how white allies, it was all about white allies and how how to be with other people. So check it out. So anyway, thank y'all so much for your time and attention, and we look forward to continuing with this. We're all trying to make a better nation in general and for this election. So y'all are doing important work for the country and the world and for humanity. So thank y'all so much, and we will see you next time.
And we should thank Ashley Spillane and Maya Jenkins.
Oh my gosh.
Ashley Spillane and Maya Jenkins.
From Impactual. And it's too.
And brought it to us. And for Cheryl and
from InSync. Yeah.
Cheryl and
Kathy.
What's her name? That's all right. I go by
Cheryl
whatever.
And Kathy from all right, y'all. So thank y'all so much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Yes.
Bye-bye.